Spencer Seale, welcome.
Glad to be here, Mark.
Yeah, no, this is fun. So there is real, as I shared, there's no real agenda, right? One of the things that I want to do is we do this just as much for internal purposes as external purposes. Ultimately, you'd love the ideal stakeholders to have a sense for the senior leadership team.
Sure.
And so ultimately, I'd love to be able to sit with every single one. What we're at 16 now. We just had our quarterly meeting over the last 2.5 days. So your schedule is good enough to be able to accommodate this. So awesome.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Just happy to be here.
Yeah. So it's been how long now?
So next month will be 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Right.
I know. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, a little bit of the origin story would be awesome.
Origin story for how I came to 90?
Or sort of how
I came into the education space.
Exactly, yeah.
So
I should have done that first, right?
But yeah, okay.
Head of education.
Yes. So, it's an interesting path. So I started my post-high school career in the military.
Yeah.
And, being the large complex that the defense contracting and military is, there's a lot of systems in place. Yeah. And one thing that they do very well is they're very clear on their expectations with education. Mm-hmm. So it's like you walk into the room and it doesn't matter if you're learning how to put on a bandage or you're learning how to read a map.
Right.
At the beginning of the conversation, this is what our goals are. And at the end of this course, you should be able to accomplish these things and perform these tasks or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
I really didn't know that was a methodology or a design, right?
Yeah.
I just thought, well, that makes logical sense. Tell me where we're going, right? Yeah. So when I left the military and kind of started my career in IT, I'm one of those people that can find flaws in things very quickly. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes that's not great. But
it's always good. It's always good.
So I was working in a help desk job. And one of the challenges that I was seeing others face was while they understood the softwares that we were supporting or the hardware that we were supporting, they didn't really have like a troubleshooting mindset or a skill set. So it's just an element that's missing. And I've always said you could take a good mechanic, teach them how to use a computer or what the inner workings of a computer are, and they can be the best support person in the world because they understand troubleshooting, right? So for me, it was I'm seeing this gap. We're seeing a lot of escalations, things going to second tier, third tier, and resolution times are getting just super long. Right. And it becomes a point of frustration for like everyone involved.
Yeah.
From customers to employees to management, right? So my suggestion was, I think we should really look into how do we troubleshoot, how do we do these things and really add those skills to part of our onboarding program as we bring new people in.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yep.
So I think the leader's next words were, great idea, Spencer. Why don't you do that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
how big of a company was that?
It was, so we supported, it was H&R Block.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So a large company.
Yeah.
So we supported tax offices throughout the United States and then also customers who did, their taxes online, right? So there's a lot of different divisions there. But during the season, which was really the issue, is the seasonality of it, right? So we're ramping up 100+ support people in a very short window, using them for a period of time, and then we kind of taper down towards the end. And so I was one of those seasonal people, and I just said, hey, I really see some support issues, and how can I help? I want to just make this better for everyone, right? And so they were like, that's a great idea, Spencer. Why don't you stay on for the off season and help us build this curriculum? And again, I know nothing about education design, learning design, none of these things. But I do know, because it's been repeated in my mind for 11 years in the military at that point, of at the end of this course, you should be able to do these things. Right. So that's really where I started, begin with the end in mind. Right. So all the conceptual things are the same. But for me, it was, And then, I'm always love to learn. So I'm like, I really want to make sure that I'm doing this well and accurately, and how I want to make sure that if I'm putting this in, that there's a return, that we actually see impact and change. Right. So for me, it was about, that was my journey into learning. I thought I was going to be an IT guy. Like, I've always liked computers and stuff. And so it just sort of navigated into that. I always liked support because I was helping people. So this is just helping different people in my mind. So that was really the beginning of the journey into education, in technical education. And, it evolved over the years. I went and worked for another small software company where we did legal software. So a lot of attorneys, and so it was very small, one-on-one, shoulder-to-shoulder type training. And then as that company grew and scaled, we had to find better ways. So we started to try to do over the phone. Again, this is early 2000s, so WebEx was around at the time. So we're using WebEx a little bit to do that. But again, we're having that one-to-one, and I'm like, this isn't scaling well. My calendar is full of repeating myself all day long. What if we created some content, put it online, and they could just go through a journey of, here's how to get started if you're a new employee at this company and you're learning the software. Let's not make Spencer or some other trainer repeat themselves 8 times a day, right? So created an online learning training center there. I kind of scaled that up, so I had spare time. So the help file was awful, so I tackled that. And it's just one of those places. It was a small company, about maybe 90 employees, and you just do whatever needs to be done, right? Kind of mentality. So, I have an eye for detail, so that worked very well for me. Enjoyed that part of the journey as well. So that's a good chunk of it. Yeah.
And then
went to work for RSA Security as a trainer and a security consultant. So kind of went into the InfoSec space. Found that my nerdy side, enjoyed that, right? But I also was doing education. So that was very enjoyable to me because it felt like it served both sides. Did a lot of travel, and the company I worked for was RSA Security, but the division that I was working in had recently been acquired by RSA, and they had partners all over the world that knew nothing about this new software. So I got a really good dose of global travel, which is always great, just expands your understanding of the world. So highly recommend travel to everyone, just because I think it just broadens your perspective in life, right? But I enjoyed that immensely, but travel wears you down after a while. So took a consulting gig in the same company just because the road had kind of worn me down a bit. But enjoyed that too, and then moved on to Rapid7, had a leader who moved there and said, brought me along and had no training program at all. And this was a security SaaS company. And they're like, we have nothing. We need something. Come help me build it. And at this point, I had done that a couple times in different capacities. So I know I enjoy the build part, right? And so it's always compelling or interesting to see that. The part of that I didn't enjoy, and this will lead into kind of when we started and had our first conversation, was that it was a paid service for training. Right? And what I found myself conflicted at times in that space, because I have a number that I'm trying to reach in a bookings and revenue for education. That number was about maybe 1.5% to 2% of the organization's total revenue. Right. Very, very small number. And so, the first time I had a conversation with the CEO, and he said, what would you do differently? My boss almost passed out, who was standing next to me. I said, I would stop charging for training. And I would guarantee that you will get your 1 or 2% back just by letting everyone have access to the content for free. Well, they didn't do that, but but it was a good idea in my mind, right? And that was part of our conversation when we started.
And you said you were talking with the CEO, and did they go and do the math, and they just came back and they said, we don't think you can get the 1% to 2% back, or was it just like
I think it was just a little too dismissive, unfortunately, right? Looking at the smaller picture of revenue. In my mind, education can be an arm of support, of client success, of marketing, of partnerships, of all these things. And when you and I started to talk about me coming to 90, my first question was, are you ever going to charge for training?
Yeah.
And your answer was not no, it was never. Right. And that to me was just like a big tick into the yes column immediately. Yeah. Because I found myself conflicted in, I'm managing to a number. And you even say, we as a company, we have company goals. Right. We don't have individual goals because we don't, well, I mean, we do have rocks and other things, but we don't have like this department has this goal and this other department has another goal. We're all on the same journey and we all win together. Right. And we all learn together. And that just makes a whole lot of sense because everybody is aligned. Right?
Yeah.
Because there were times that I felt like a customer could benefit from training, but I felt like I needed to manage to a number, and that's not in the best real, the customer isn't going to win in that scenario. Right. Yeah. So to me, it was, just hearing that never, I'm like, great. Okay. Right. I can actually focus on creating quality learning, building a team, and not focusing on like how many people came and what I call vanity metrics. And in that, even if it's 1% of the revenue, I'm like, that's a rounding error. Let's just make it available to everyone. Right. Yeah.
And so the expression I used around never was what? Why would it?
Information wants to be free. Right. Yeah. Always. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I liked that concept because, to me, and you use the teaching hospital analogy a lot as well. It's like we're not only treating people, but we're teaching doctors how to treat people as well. Right. And as I've said, I'm a lifelong learner. Anytime I ever have an opportunity to learn something new, I try to take advantage of it. So to me, that was just a huge appeal. And again, building from scratch again, right? And I always enjoy that build part of the process.
I've never asked you this, but so when you came here, you obviously that was an attractive thing. There are other things that obviously you came here, so you were attracted to it. Sure. What didn't you expect that you found when you got here?
I had no idea what EOS was, and no idea really what a business operating system was. Yeah. So I remember that my very first day, I had been on about 30 minutes, and we had our first senior leadership team, level 10. Yeah. And I logged in, and I got off the meeting, which was, I think, around 90 minutes. Right. And I walked into the kitchen and said to my wife, that was the most efficient meeting I've ever been in my entire life. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And while I had understood, during the interview process, I had started a trial, I had played around, but I really hadn't dug into the content, which we didn't have yet. Right? So, and you and I had several conversations about, the concepts and the tools and the disciplines, but until you really get in and start doing it, I think that was it. And, I can't stress enough how different meetings are. Right. I think the other thing is, if I had to pen one other thing, is everybody has core values or things they put on the wall. Right. And sometimes they're just on the wall. Yeah. Yeah. Every week, for sure, almost every day, I hear somebody talk about our core values. Yeah. So to me, that's super interesting, and it's always a challenge as we grow, and we've gone from 40 to 170
to 108. I mean, right? I think maybe even 182
so we've
makes it.
4x'd in size in the last 2 years. Yeah. And I don't see much change in the culture, which is that in a good way. Yeah. So those are probably the two things to me. really living the culture, and then just the quality of the meetings day after day, week after week.
Yeah.
Everybody's already bought in.
Right.
So I imagine that's different than when you're a coach and you're coming in and you're trying to implement this. I feel very fortunate that I came into a place where this was all already in place.
Right.
And I just got to come in and see the machine running.
Yeah. Yeah. What's been the hardest part of the journey so far?
We want to do so much, right?
Yeah.
And as I say,
Yeah.
Mark Abbott, wellspring of ideas.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
you do, as a visionary, an excellent job of coming up with new ideas. And it's patience
Yeah.
and an ordered approach
Yeah.
to that can be, it can be hard because we
Yeah.
want to do everything. Right.
Right.
And even when we were talking in our quarterly this time about who our ideal customers are and really focusing in on that, because we know there's all these other opportunities that are probably very good and that we
Yeah.
could chase,
Right.
but that's
can't.
not
Yeah.
where we're focusing right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. What did we just say our theme for the year is?
less is more until it's not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so
I was trying to decide if it was that or your
Yeah.
other one that you say all the time.
Yeah. Slow,
Yes.
smooth, fast.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that it's hard, especially you see we all know there's thousands of things to do, and as you know, we just finished our quarterly. We talked about that, right? So 2.5 days, C-suite, and then the SLT, 16 people in total, and then towards the end of the day, Chris was really probably, I don't think he was intentionally giving me grief, but it's like, hey guys, do we need all these ones here on the long-term issue list? And I'm like,
right.
Because I think there are 80 there.
They got to go somewhere.
Right.
Right.
And it's like, I've gone through it every single quarter, and there are ideas that exist literally from day one that we haven't even begun to execute on.
Right. And I go through those ones as well. And, since my team a lot of time is executing on the ideas that you're coming up with,
Right.
I usually look at yours too.
Yeah.
And I see some that I know have been there since, I just finished my 8th quarterly, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they've been there since then,
Yeah.
right? And it's just not now,
Yeah,
right? It's not
exactly.
never. If it's never, we take it off.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So at some point, some of them, you're like, nah, we're just never going to do that. But and in particular, with regard to, because you were overseeing both the content side of the organization as well as, the educational side. And then that educational side is helping us not just with our customers, but, we're now, digging better and doing better, focusing more on really even helping our own employees.
Right.
And in terms of acquiring the skills they want to acquire to address their own personal growth needs,
Right.
And career needs. When you look at where we are and where you think the world's going, right, over the next 1 to 2 years, what do you think is like? If you were to look at us 2 years from now,
Right.
what do you think will be very different about us than today? In your area, in world.
My area, I'm going to say just more on demand, right? More on demand content. And I know we did actually bring in a learning development specialist in Q4. So Ashley is 100% focused on working inside the company.
Yeah.
How can we improve our onboarding? How
Right.
can we improve our leadership development internally, right?
Yeah.
Because when you go from 40 to 170, 180, you're going to bring in new leaders from outside the organization that don't know 90.
Yeah.
You're also going to bring up people who maybe know our company but don't necessarily have all the leadership skills, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's like we got to scale that, and then the same for customers, and the same for partners and everyone. I think we just have to continue to do more on demand. And as a small business starts out, you can be very white glove.
Right.
You can be I'm going to hold your hand through this journey, or I'm going to drag you through this journey if I have to get you to do it. And as you grow and you start to develop segments of customers, you just can't do that with everyone, right? We have 12,000 companies. We can't have a one-to-one journey with every one of them.
Yeah.
So for me, it is
not
just
yet.
Not yet, but it is scale. So
Yeah.
to me, it is
Yeah.
scale, and to automate as much as possible. And two areas I think of, it's just learning the software for yourself and having that journey for yourself. I'm a new user at a company that is a 90 customer, or we're a brand new 90 customer, and we have all these things we have to do to start. Those are completely different journeys, right?
Well, and that was interesting, right? And I'm embarrassed to say that who did you bring it? Who brought up we've got to think about creating onboarding education for new people in our software at companies that have been in our software.
Somebody did bring that up, but that has been on my kind of persona list from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know it's such a small number, right? Again, where do you want to focus your time and effort?
Right.
It's very important.
Yeah.
And I want to have, and I think once we start to embed more knowledge sharing tools in the product itself, it'll be much easier to just have that content there. And you go, hey, I'm brand new. I logged in. Someone added me. Where do I start and where do I begin? And we talked about a lot of that depends on what seat they sit in the company, right?
Yeah. Have you, so knowledge sharing tool, you brought that up, right? So, it's one of my passion plays. I think we're going to be in beta this quarter.
I'm not 100% on that, but I think you're right. But we are looking at, I think so.
I think we just did the rocks. I think it's beta this quarter.
Yeah,
right?
and my team's had an alpha version for a little bit as well. So we've been using it a little bit with the learning and development team to a lot of things for onboarding to 90. How can we help test this new tool by loading these journeys in
and I'm not going to play gotcha.
Okay.
Right? It's not my intention here. It's just you and me talking, right?
Yeah.
We won't let anybody know we're talking about this. Have we started to think about teaching people how to use the knowledge sharing tool and all they can do with it?
So, yes, in a sense, in that we start with the technical documentation side. Right. So I have a couple technical writers, on the team. And so they have two areas of focus. One is that always being in lockstep with product marketing and with the product team, and making sure that when products are released, at a minimum, we've got good technical documentation on how to use the tool.
Right.
Our larger features, we will go much more in depth. So something like knowledge sharing tool, there will be yes to all of that. So when you say, has someone? Yes, someone has. Someone named Spencer has had that on his mind.
Yeah, because I haven't given it any thought, to be honest with you.
Well,
I was just sitting here thinking about it. I was going,
that's my job, right?
But that's not a small, actually.
No, it's not. It's not small.
That's not small, right? And so I guess, just thinking out loud with you, in my mind, we can get away with not having our complete act together, educationally speaking, on that during beta. But when we go to general
alpha,
release,
yep, absolutely.
So then we're talking probably having that ready by the end of the quarter.
Yeah.
So that may be a rock that we haven't identified yet.
Could be. There's some exploration there for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
To just see how far down that path we are.
Yeah.
And how ready we are.
Yeah.
But a lot of that will be also, if we go into beta, we want to have, we try to take that iterative approach, right? What's the why?
Yeah.
Right. And what's the how? Like, let's really nail those.
Yeah.
And then, because when you introduce a new tool to existing users, you got to sell it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
you certainly got to explain it, right?
Yeah. The why is the sell.
The why is the sell, right? Yeah. And then the other tool that we have coming out in beta is going to be surveys.
Yep.
And because I think, are we like in limited beta right now on that, or is it just in?
No, we're in the alpha.
We're in alpha still.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because obviously
we
experienced it today. I mean, we used it. We've been using it.
Yes.
But we got.
We revamped it, and I really like the new format.
Yeah. Yeah, it's much. I mean, I was other than the silly issues that are easy to fix, pagination
Yes.
and
Yes.
and a couple words that we saw. We should definitely be in beta with that within probably, I want to say, what do you think? Within a month.
Yeah.
To be safe.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think that
that's
sounds
pretty
about
cool, right?
That's probably a Greg question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we'll have probably immediately 4 of our surveys that'll be in there. One for companies running on EOS, so we're going to call an org assessment. Mm-hmm. Then we have for folks who are just trying to understand where the heck they are when they start running on 90, a baseline, and then an update fitness review, and then the stages of development assessment. Right. And then I've got a new one I want, as of course you know.
Yes. The spring keeps on springing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But the next one I think I'd like to do is the entrepreneurial archetype.
Yep.
So as we've talked about, I think a few times on this podcast, right? The 5 types of 5 archetypes, because then if you understand who you are, then it'll help you figure out who you need to go out and for lack of a better term, partner with, right? Who you need to focus on in terms of starting that journey of building a stage 5 company, which we talk about all the time, which is a company that someone would love to either buy from you or take over running for you that you'd be super delighted with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you got to find that right balance, right? Someone who complements you well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the more assessment tools we can provide to help you do those things. And I know you've talked about using Colby internally and how well that helps us. Yeah. Even when we were talking about this podcast, and I'm a very, very low quick start, and I don't deal well with ambiguity. Yeah. You're like, let's do a podcast. I'm like, what are we going to talk about? It's like, we'll figure it out.
Was there anything you wanted to talk about on this podcast?
Not really.
I know.
No. It's just good to chat.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, I really enjoy this. Yeah. Is there anything else that would be interesting to?
Well, we talked about automation.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about using AI a little bit in that as well, because I think that's very valid. So we've been using AI tools that some of our vendors provide from a help perspective, right? Yeah. So, as you know, we have a chat in the product, and I was just reviewing, we've really this quarter taken to task to let's make it better. Yeah. And let's really help identify what are the questions people are asking that I'm going to use a corporate bingo word and say low-hanging fruit. Right. But what are the things that the AI can answer for these people or point them to the right place so that our support team can handle the more challenging issues, right? Yeah. So I'm happy to report that we are very close to 6 out of 10 people who start to interact with chat. Yeah. Just find their answer for themselves. That's awesome. I think, and I think we're going to have to end up here soon. But on that note, I was reading recently one of the big names. Right? They got it up to 7 out of 10. And I was kind of curious where we were. So 6 out of 10 is not too bad considering there are thousands and thousands of people. And we're just a small little company. I read an article recently about Klarna, which is a payment processor, and they have, 700x, or what. But the majority of their questions are the same from every single user, right? So it's just, you have to really kind of do that apples to apples comparison to see, but that's a good benchmark. Yeah. And if we can get to 7 out of 10, I'd be very pleased. Especially with the complexity we have. Cool. For sure. Well, thank you, sir. Yeah. All right. Excellent chatting with you. It's going to be an interesting bunch of years in front of us on the education front, man. I look forward to the journey. Yeah, and me too. Yeah. Right. Great catching up with you. Thanks. Yeah.